Hey everybody, I'm Flux Ascension, and I play Rhianwyn Halcyne, or Rhea for short, in the final chorus, the current campaign that the Phoenix Gaming Guild is streaming on Friday nights. Be sure to rejoin us after this intense session at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Friday, May 8th, 2026. Today I'll be recapping Session 6. The party stood by with a dead body on the floor and the Lord of Kings walking calmly away from campus like he hadn't just ended someone with a single motion. Brock was gone, and the power song was gone. And somewhere in the quiet that followed, the party made a decision that has been on their minds all day. They went back through the basement door, through time, they rang the bell, and ended up in the middle of the campus grounds of the original High Throne. The party agreed that they needed to find Zephyr. If they could find him before whatever had changed him again, they might be able to reverse what had broken previously. So, they walked an enchanted road that made the journey to Sialma Grove take only an hour. Voshk, as it turns out, is from here, or at least from just outside of it. He suggested they find the nicest bar in town. The city itself was vibrant and lush, the bamboo was thick, and the streets were full. And somewhere in it, Zephyr was looking for something he definitely shouldn't find. They split up. Voshk and Demo went to search the other bars. Rune, Leon, and Rhea held down the table at the largest tavern. This tavern was called the Treant. Voshk recommended the Treant on the logic that a noble adjacent air genasi would choose the nicest establishment. After an hour of searching, Voshk and Demo found Zephyr. Not in a bar, but in a potion shop, buying supplies and grinning like a kid in a candy store. They followed him out, down some streets and past a homeless man to whom Zephyr stopped, looked at, walked into a nearby bakery and returned with not one, but 2 loaves of bread before continuing on without a word. Voshk watched this, said nothing, but filed it away. They then tracked him to a tavern called the Dragon's Tail, but before Zephyr entered, he looked down an alleyway and his posture changed. His stance was in full defensive readiness, like something was there. Leon and Vosh debated on speaking to him. Back at the Treant, Rune, Leon, and Rhea grew restless, and so Rune suggested that Leon and Rhea head out to see where the others had gone. Rhea and Leon caught up in time to watch as Zephyr was staring down into the alleyway. Leon dashed back to the Treant to retrieve Rune. Demo tapped Zephyr on the shoulder, at which he fired a lightning bolt into the empty alleyway in complete shock. Zephyr was rattled. He'd told them what he'd seen, a vision, a future, a large being covered in scales, beasts at his command, raining destruction down upon Minthendor. And before that image came, an offer to take something, to prevent this. Demo, to his credit, was the one who said it plainly. Someone offering you a future of horror and asking you to act against history is not an ally. Zephyr mentioned that a box would be present at the creation of the power songs. The party debated and ultimately decided that they would observe the creation the bell wanted them to. That creation being that of the Archblade at the arena and not the creation of the power songs. They did, however, stop for the drink Lizard Gizzard on the way. Priorities. On their trek back to the university, Voshk heard something, a baby, crying. He said it sounded familiar. Now, Voshk has made it very clear that he does not care for babies. Even so, his own words said, "This one sounded familiar." After a few moments, the rest of the party could hear it too, which meant it wasn't just lizardfolk's senses picking up something ordinary. Rhea wanted to look into it because it seemed odd. Leon, who has younger siblings and therefore an instinct to protect, both of them moved toward the dim alleyway where the sound was coming from. The plan to observe the arena quietly evaporated, and they followed the sound into the southern district, quiet in a way that felt wrong. No wind, no footsteps, and no crying baby. In the center was a small pond with a large stone sticking out. Zephyr's eyes went wide when he saw it, because on top of this stone was the very same box from the vision he had just told the party about. And then they heard the sound of snapping bamboo. The party split up to hide. Voshk dove into the murky water of the pond. Zephyr twin-cast invisibility on Rune and Rhea, and then disappeared into the tops of the impossibly tall bamboo, leaving Demo and Leon to their own skillet hiding in the middle of an open street. Several of the cultists surrounded our dynamic duo, and Demo's silver tongue almost got them out of it, but ultimately they were taken captive and to wherever this group of people were going. Then, what they watched come out of the trees was not a monster, but a man. He was tall, pale, with long wet hair and a deathly pallor about him. His eyes had no color, just black. He didn't look at Demo and Leon, who were failing to hide. Instead, he walked past them, grabbed the box from the stone, and went into the building at the north end of the district. The cultists followed him in. Hundreds of them. Red-lined cloaks, a broken music note insignia, midnight black on the outside. Not a single one of them stayed to guard the exterior side of the door. However, before the last cultist went through, he flicked open a cylindrical object with a moon cap on top, looked at the sky, and said something that sounded like an apology to Shar, and then threw whatever was inside of the cylinder into the sky. And just like that, night fell. Stars filled the sky, and the party outside understood what that meant. It meant it wasn't the bell that shifted time. It was whatever was happening here. The interior of the building was larger than you would imagine. As the party looked into through the windows, they saw it was enchanted to hold an entire coliseum inside. Cultists in the bleachers, chained prisoners in the middle, wizards, artificers, bards, instruments strapped to their back, goggles over their heads, and at the very center is the last song, seated at a table with 6 items laid out in front of him. A sword with black steel curved with jagged edges running along the back. A ring, bright purple with something moving inside of it. A crown, silver, not gold, with spines that curved up into horns. A flask, gold, with a skull pressed into the center, ornate. A cloak, royal green on the inside, and on the outside, the same broken song note insignia, worn by everyone else in that room. Demo and Leon resisted to the best of their ability, but they were no match for the last song. With a hideous grin, the last song took something from each of them. He took their pinkies. The cultist who had been trailing the last song picked up their severed fingers and began to chant, his eyes rolling back into his head. Outside, the party noticed that the stars began winking out, and a tendril-like vortex began sucking the light down into the building and into the severed fingers. They elongated and morphed into demonic-looking angels. Zephyr nudged Voshk and pointed to the back of the Colosseum. There it was, the box. Then their attention turned back to the center as the last song began to don himself with the items. First, the ring. Wings tore from his back. He picked up the sword, and his arm turned to stone. He donned the cloak, and for a moment he wasn't there. Then all of a sudden he reappeared. He downed the flask, and whatever had been wrong with him, the deathly pallor, the scarring, simply dissipated. He was strong. Then he picked up the crown, placed it on his head. Nothing happened. He looked at it, put it back on his head again. Still, nothing happened. He then shouted a command, and 2 lizard folk were brought in, one male and one female. The male stood in front of the female. He demanded answers, and they obliged. He did not like their response, as he responded with the sword instead of words. He then turned his gaze to Demo and Leon. It was at that moment the party was ejected from this timeline before anything worse could happen. They were deposited back into their own dorm, into their own present, minus 2 fingers. Demo and Leon and Zephyr left for the infirmary. Vosh said that everyone should leave as he was planning on tearing apart the house to look for the countersong and would destroy the house to do it. Rhea agreed and ran to the infirmary to check in on Leon and Demo. At the infirmary, the high-throne nurse was very professional about the whole thing. Leon and Demo admitted that it did not happen on campus, and so she quoted them just a mere 50,000 gold for 2 7th-level regeneration spells. Zephyr plopped down a bag of 50,000 gold without even thinking. But he requested one thing from Leon and Demo. They were to explain why Vosh was angry at him. Once they gave him enough, he left them to it. The regeneration spell worked, painfully. The healer explained that their nails would grow back in a couple of weeks, and they were given the same advice. Sleep and try not to lose any more fingers. Back at the dorm, Rune watched Voshk. Not the version of Voshk who shrugs things off and turns into a bear and calls it a day. This version throws a chair, stands in the middle of a ransacked living room, having gone through every inch of the place looking for a power song that he couldn't find. Rune sat next to him, not to fix it, but to say the thing that Voshk probably needed to hear more than a solution. You're not alone. You're not the only one carrying this. Vosh said the thing that had been sitting underneath all of it. There's a timeline where Brock is dead, where the Lord of Kings wins, where no one was fast enough or smart enough or strong enough to stop it. Even if that timeline doesn't exist anymore and they fixed it, it still happened. It's still real, and it still left scars. And Voshk, who typically does not stop to think, who runs on instinct and movement and the next thing in front of him, had been made to sit inside with that knowledge, with nowhere to put it. He said, I don't like losing my friends. I don't have many. And Rune, who processes grief through logic and preparation, said something that surprised even him. He acknowledged the gap. He named it directly, that the party trusts Voshk's instincts more than Rune's calculations. And now that's not always wrong, but it means Vosh carries more than he realizes. Rune asked if Voshk wanted to join him in the kitchen to cook dinner, because when the others get back, they were going to need something normal to walk into. And normalcy is something they could build right now, together, in the kitchen, if Voshk was willing. Voshk was willing. Before the others came back, a knock sounded at the door, and upon opening it, Rune saw Brock wearing an apron that said, I like scales, and enough cooking supplies to feed twice as many people. This wasn't the Brock from the other timeline. However, this one was alive. Annoyed that no one had told him Voshk thought he was the better cook, and Brock was ready to prove him wrong. Shortly after, Leon and Demo reunited with 10 fingers each and came home to something warm. The party leveled up, level 4. The milestone earned quietly over dinner in a dorm that still has a sealed basement and a ghost who used to be the Archblade, and at least one power song hidden somewhere no one has found yet. In hindsight, they witnessed the creation of the last song's power. They watched as the artifacts assembled became the songs of power, and they found Zephyr before whatever he did previously allowed the last song to make 5 instead of 4 power songs. Join us next week as we see what the party does with this knowledge and how they've been changed since. We are the Phoenix Gaming Guild. This is the final chorus. We'll see you at the table.